I'm Samantha Mitchell, 34, standing on the deck of my oceanfront villa watching servers pour Dom Perignon for Silicon Valley's elite. 3 days ago, I sold my cybersecurity startup for millions. Yet the notification lighting up my phone stings more than champagne on an open wound. Sorry, honey. We can't make your housewarming. Flaunting wealth isn't our style. My parents always making me feel I wasn't enough. I tuck my phone away as another message flashes. Security alert. Unregistered visitors at the main gate. My parents, uninvited, are here. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had family who couldn't celebrate your success. Trust me, what happens next in this family showdown is something you won't want to miss. Growing up in Seattle's Magnolia neighborhood meant pristine lawns, luxury cars and driveways, and families who looked perfect on Christmas cards. My family was no exception. On the surface, we were the picture of upper-middle-class success. My father, Richard, the corporate lawyer whose name adorned a downtown firm. My mother, Patricia, former Miss Washington, who'd traded her crown for charity galas and country club memberships. My sister, Natalie, the straight-A student who played violin and later became the surgeon who married another surgeon. Then there was me, Samantha, the daughter who asked too many questions, who preferred computers to cotillions, who never quite fit the mold my parents had crafted with painstaking precision. Samantha, sit up straight. My mother would whisper sharply at dinner parties, her smile never faltering for the guests. Samantha, why can't you be more like your sister? It became the soundtrack of my teenage years. I tried. God knows I tried. I maintained the GPA, joined the right clubs, dated boys from good families. I even got accepted to my father's alma mater law school, which should have been the crowning achievement. The Mitchell family legacy would continue. But 3 months into my first semester, I knew I was dying inside. The code I'd been writing on the side, a cybersecurity protocol that could revolutionize how companies protected customer data, was calling me louder than property law ever could. The day I told my parents I was dropping out was the first major fracture in our relationship. We were sitting in their formal dining room, the one reserved for important conversations. I'm leaving law school to start a tech company, I announced after my mother served her famous roast beef. The silence that followed was deafening. You're throwing away everything we've given you, my father finally said, his voice dangerously quiet. Everything we've worked for. Richard, she's just confused, my mother interjected, as though I wasn't sitting right there. It's that influence from those computer people she's been hanging around with. I'm not confused, I insisted. I have a business plan. I've already secured some angel investment. This is what I want to do. What you want? My father's laugh was bitter. Life isn't about what you want, Samantha. It's about responsibility, duty, family. That night marked the beginning of my exile. Not a physical one, I was still invited to family events. Still included in Christmas cards, but an emotional one. My parents began treating me like a phase they had to weather. A temporary embarrassment they needed to manage. The first real betrayal came 3 months later when I called my father about accessing my college fund to invest in equipment for my startup. There was a pause on the line. That money is gone, Samantha. We used it for Natalie's wedding. All of it? Without telling me? The $47,000 my grandparents had set aside for each of us had vanished. Natalie is following the path we laid out. She deserved a beautiful wedding. When you decide to get serious about your future, we'll discuss financial support. That was the moment I decided I would never ask them for anything again. I would succeed not because of them, but to spite them. Over the next few years, the rejections continued, each one a paper cut to my already wounded heart. They declined my invitation to my first office opening. They couldn't make it to the industry award ceremony where I was recognized as a rising entrepreneur. They were busy when my company secured our first major client. The Christmas dinner 5 years ago was the breaking point. I'd just been featured in a tech magazine as one to watch. I brought a copy to dinner, hoping foolishly for some acknowledgement. My father barely glanced at it before saying, "It's disappointing to see you still pursuing this hobby instead of a real career." Hobby? I couldn't believe my ears. Dad, I employ 32 people. We're protecting data for healthcare companies. We're making a difference. You're embarrassing the family, my mother said, refilling her wine glass. The Hendersons asked if you were going through some sort of crisis. I didn't know what to say. That night, as I drove away from their house, I promised myself I would build something so undeniably successful that even they couldn't diminish it. Not for their approval I'd finally accepted, I would never have that, but for my own vindication. Standing in my $6 million ocean villa 5 years later, watching the security footage of my parents at the gate, I realized that moment had finally arrived. The question was, would I let them in to witness what I had built without them? Or leave them outside looking in just as they had done to me for so many years? After that Christmas dinner, I threw myself into my company with renewed determination. My tiny apartment in Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood became command central for Quantum Shield, my cybersecurity startup. The living room transformed into our first office, with mismatched desks from thrift stores and computers salvaged from various places. My dining table was permanently covered in whiteboards, code snippets scrawled in dry erase marker. Being a woman in tech meant fighting for every inch of respect. At my first pitch competition, an investor asked if my boyfriend had written the algorithm. At a networking event, I was mistaken for a caterer. When I finally got meetings with venture capitalists, they often directed technical questions to my male engineers, even after I'd made it clear I was the lead developer. "You don't look like a programmer," became a phrase I heard so often I considered having it printed on business cards. My parents, meanwhile, continued their campaign of subtle sabotage. When family friends asked about me, my mother would sigh dramatically and say, "Samantha's going through a phase. We're hoping she'll come to her senses soon." My father told his colleagues I was playing entrepreneur until I was ready to grow up and go back to law school. The second betrayal came when I discovered they were actively undermining me in their social circles. My college friend Bethany, whose father was in my dad's golf club, called me after an awkward encounter. "Sam, I don't know how to tell you this, but your dad told my father your business was a hobby project and that I shouldn't waste my company's money on your services." Bethany's family owned a chain of medical clinics, exactly the type of client we were targeting. The pain was sharp, but I channeled it into productivity. I worked 18-hour days, fueled by caffeine and determination. I slept on an air mattress in my office more nights than I slept in my own bed. When friends invited me out, I declined. Dating became non-existent. Everything that wasn't Quantum Shield was a distraction I couldn't afford. The turning point came when I met Amanda Reynolds at a Women in Tech conference. Brilliant, fierce, and with a background in marketing that complemented my technical skills perfectly, Amanda became not just my co-founder, but the sister I wished I'd had. "Your parents are idiots," she declared after I confided in her about my family situation. "But their loss is the tech world's gain. You're going to change this industry, Samantha. And I want to be right there with you when you do." With Amanda handling business development and me leading the technical side, Quantum Shield began to gain traction. Our proprietary encryption protocol caught the attention of smaller healthcare providers, then educational institutions, and finally, some mid-sized financial firms. Around this time, I met Daniel Lewis at a cybersecurity symposium. As the head of IT security for a regional bank, he was initially a potential client, but his genuine interest in our technology and in me evolved into something more. Unlike the men my parents had deemed suitable, Daniel valued my ambition. He showed up with takeout during late coding sessions. He listened to my technical explanations without his eyes glazing over. He believed in me. "You've got something revolutionary here," he told me one night, looking over our protocol. "This isn't just good, it's game-changing." With Daniel's support, Amanda's partnership, and a growing team of talented developers who believed in our vision, Quantum Shield expanded rapidly. We moved from my apartment to a small office, then to a larger one downtown. Our client list grew, our protocols became more sophisticated, and industry publications began to take notice. The third betrayal came just as we were preparing for our Series B funding round. A potential investor called to cancel our meeting, sounding uncomfortable. "I ran into your father at a charity event," he explained. "He mentioned some concerns about your company's stability and your temperament as a leader. I'm sorry, but we'll have to pass." I was stunned. What exactly did he say? that your business was doomed to fail and that you had a history of abandoning projects when they got difficult. He suggested we'd be throwing our money away. The rage I felt was unlike anything I'd experienced before. My own father was actively sabotaging my chance at success, not just passively disapproving, but taking concrete steps to ensure I failed. I called my sister Natalie, desperate to understand. "They're scared," she said after a long pause. "You're building something they don't understand, in a world they can't control. And worse, you're succeeding without following their blueprint. It terrifies them. That doesn't give them the right to destroy what I'm building." "No, it doesn't," she agreed. "But they won't stop. Their entire identity is wrapped up in being right about how life should be lived. Your success challenges everything they believe." I hung up and made 2 decisions that night. First, I would never again discuss business with anyone in my parents' social circle. And second, I would succeed so spectacularly that their attempts to diminish me would only make them look foolish. The next 3 years were a blur of growth, challenges, setbacks, and breakthroughs. We weathered a data breach attempt that actually showcased the strength of our protocols. We expanded internationally. We quadrupled our workforce. And through it all, my parents remained distant, their occasional communications tinged with condescension and veiled criticism. Then came the call that changed everything. TechCorp, one of the largest technology conglomerates in the world, wanted to acquire Quantum Shield. Their initial offer, $32 million. The negotiations were intense, the due diligence exhaustive. When we finally signed the papers and the money hit our accounts, I felt strangely hollow. I had achieved exactly what I set out to do, built something undeniably successful, valuable enough that a tech giant wanted to own it, yet the vindication I'd expected didn't come. "You're worth more than their validation," Daniel reminded me, holding me close as we watched the sunset from his balcony. "You always have been." He was right, of course. But some part of me, that little girl who could never quite measure up, still yearned for her parents to see her, really see her, and be proud. Perhaps that's why I decided to buy the ocean villa in Malibu. At $6 million, it was extravagant even with my new wealth. But it was also undeniable, a physical manifestation of success that even my parents couldn't dismiss as a phase or a hobby. As I stood on the deck of my new home, watching waves crash against the shore, I made another decision. I would invite my family to see what I had built. Not to gloat, but to offer one last chance for reconciliation. One final opportunity for them to be part of my life. I had no idea the decision would set in motion a confrontation 5 years in the making. The Malibu villa exceeded even my wildest expectations. Perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean, the 5,800-square-foot home featured floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the water like living art. The infinity pool seemed to merge with the horizon, creating an illusion of endless blue. Inside, polished concrete floors contrasted with warm wood accents, while a floating staircase led to 4 bedrooms, each with its own balcony and ocean view. I spent the first week just wandering from room to room, running my fingers along countertops, opening and closing doors, sitting in different chairs trying to convince myself this was really mine. This house represented everything I'd fought for. Not just wealth, but the freedom to create my own path. The chef's kitchen with its commercial-grade appliances would never see my mother's disapproving glances at my cooking. The home office with built-in bookshelves would never echo with my father's lectures about real careers. This space was entirely mine, unburdened by their expectations or judgments. Yet, despite everything, a small voice inside me still whispered, maybe now they'll finally be proud. After 2 years of minimal contact holiday texts, obligatory birthday calls, and a tense dinner when I was in Seattle for business, I decided to reach out. Perhaps owning a home, that ultimate symbol of stability and success, would finally bridge the gap between us. I crafted the invitation carefully, conscious of how they might interpret my words. "Dear Mom and Dad, I'd like to invite you to a housewarming celebration at my new home in Malibu on Saturday, June 12th at 6 p.m. After selling Quantum Shield, I've decided to put down roots on the West Coast. It would mean a lot to have you there. Love, Samantha." I attached photos of the view but purposely excluded shots that showcased the house's more opulent features. I wanted them to come because they cared about me, not because they were impressed by what I owned. 3 days passed before my phone pinged with my mother's response. "Samantha, we're sorry, but we won't be able to attend your housewarming. Your father and I are uncomfortable with this display of wealth. We've always taught you that flaunting material possessions is in poor taste. Furthermore, we can't in good conscience celebrate how you've achieved this success, abandoning the education we provided for you and choosing a path without regard for family tradition. We hope you'll come to understand our position." Mom. I read the message 5 times, each word a fresh cut, display of wealth, poor taste, without regard for family tradition. My invitation, my peace offering, had been rejected with surgical precision, each phrase designed to diminish my achievements and question my character. I wasn't even aware I was crying until a tear splashed onto my phone screen. I wiped it away angrily and opened Instagram, seeking distraction. That's when I saw it. My mother's post from that morning, a photo of her and my father at their country club, captioned, "Looking forward to the Hamiltons' anniversary gala this weekend. Saturday plans June social," the same weekend as my housewarming. They hadn't declined because of prior commitments or travel difficulties. They had chosen a country club event over their daughter's milestone. I called Daniel, my voice breaking as I relayed what happened. "They're never going to change, are they?" I asked as he listened patiently. "No matter what I achieve, it's never going to be enough. Sam, listen to me." Daniel's voice was gentle but firm. "You've spent years trying to earn their approval. Maybe it's time to accept that the problem isn't you, it's them. Their inability to celebrate your success says everything about their limitations and nothing about your worth." After we hung up, I poured myself a glass of wine and walked out onto the deck, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The beauty was almost painful, highlighting the emptiness I felt inside. Amanda called next, having received a text from Daniel. "I just heard what happened. Those sanctimonious, judgmental..." She cut herself off. "I'm sorry, Sam. You deserve better." "Maybe I should cancel the whole thing," I sighed. "What's the point of celebrating if my own family won't be there?" "The point?" Amanda's voice rose in indignation. "The point is that you've achieved something extraordinary, and that deserves to be celebrated. If they won't celebrate you, find people who will." She paused, and I could almost hear the idea forming. "In fact," she continued, her voice taking on that tone she got when hatching a plan, "why not make this the most spectacular housewarming they'll regret missing? Invite everyone who's supported you along the way. Invite the people who believed in Quantum Shield when it was just an idea. Invite the clients who trusted us before we had a track record. Invite the investors who saw our potential." The more she talked, the more the idea took hold. This wouldn't be about revenge, it would be about gratitude. A celebration of the journey and the people who made it possible. And, Amanda added, her voice turning mischievous, "why not invite some people your parents actually respect? Former classmates who've done well. Business leaders from their social circle. Maybe even that venture capitalist who's on the board at your dad's country club, Craig Donovan, right?" I smiled despite myself. "They would hate that." "Exactly." Amanda laughed. "Sometimes the best revenge is massive success surrounded by witnesses." Over the next 2 weeks, I threw myself into planning with the same intensity I'd once devoted to building Quantum Shield. I hired Seattle's top caterer, who agreed to fly down with their team for the weekend. I arranged for a live jazz band, string lights throughout the property, and subtle but elegant decorations that complemented the home's modern aesthetic. The guest list grew to include everyone who had been part of my success story. My first employees, the angel investor who took a chance on us, professors who had encouraged my interest in technology, and yes, several people from my parents' social circle who had achieved success in ways my parents respected. Craig Donovan, the venture capitalist who sat on the same charity board as my father, responded to my invitation with surprising enthusiasm. "Samantha, I've heard great things about what you've built. Wouldn't miss it for the world." The day before I finalized the guest list, my phone rang. It was Natalie. "I got your invitation," she said, her voice tentative. "I'm coming, but Mom and Dad told me they declined." They did more than decline, I replied, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. They basically said I was tasteless for flaunting my wealth while they're attending a country club gala the same night. Natalie was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry, Sam. I know that must hurt. It's fine, I lied. I'm used to their disapproval by now. There's something you should know, she said slowly. It's not just disapproval. They're jealous, Sam. Especially Dad. Jealous? Of what? Of your success. Your independence. Dad's firm isn't doing as well as they pretend. They've lost several major clients to younger, more tech-savvy firms. And you selling your company for millions while Dad's struggling to maintain his lifestyle. It's driving him crazy. I sat down, stunned. Why would they be jealous? They've always acted like what I do is worthless. Because you did it your way, Natalie explained. You broke the mold and succeeded spectacularly. It challenges everything they believe about how life should work. And worse, they've been telling people that your business was funded with family money. That they've been silent partners all along. The fifth, betrayal. My own parents had been taking credit for my success while simultaneously denigrating it to my face. Are you serious? I could barely get the words out. I'm sorry, Natalie said again. I should have told you sooner. I'm caught in the middle, Sam. I love you, but they're still my parents too. After we hung up, I stared at the final guest list on my laptop. Natalie's name was there, but our parents' names were crossed out. For a moment, I considered deleting them, completely erasing any evidence that I'd ever wanted them there at all. Instead, I closed my laptop and went to find Daniel, who had arrived that afternoon to help with final preparations. He took one look at my face and opened his arms. My sister just called, I said into his shoulder. Apparently, my parents have been telling everyone they financially backed my company, that they were silent partners all along. Daniel held me tighter. You know that says everything about them and nothing about you, right? I nodded, but the pain was still raw. Hey, he said, pulling back to look at me. Tomorrow is your day, not theirs. You've earned this celebration 1,000 times over. Don't let them take that from you. That night, as I stood on my deck looking at the moonlight reflecting off the ocean, I made a promise to myself. This housewarming would be about celebrating my journey and thanking those who supported me, not about my parents' absence. I was done letting their approval define my worth. But as I would soon discover, life rarely cooperates with our carefully laid plans. The morning of Friday, June 11th, the day before my housewarming, dawned with perfect Malibu weather. Clear blue skies, a gentle breeze off the Pacific, and temperatures hovering around 75 degrees. From my bedroom balcony, I could see white-capped waves breaking against the shore and a pod of dolphins playing in the distance. It should have been idyllic. Instead, my stomach was in knots. The universe is giving you perfect party weather, Daniel said, handing me a cup of coffee as he joined me on the balcony. Try to enjoy it. I managed a smile. I know. I just keep thinking about who won't be here, and not about the 78 people who will. He raised an eyebrow. Including pretty much everyone who actually matters in your life? He had a point. The caterers would arrive in a few hours. The rental company was delivering tables, chairs, and place settings at noon. The florist was bringing arrangements that afternoon. And Amanda was flying in from Seattle with her boyfriend that evening. I took a deep breath, trying to center myself. You're right. Today is about preparation, not rumination. We spent the morning finalizing details, confirming deliveries, and transforming the already beautiful property into something magical. String lights were hung along the deck railings and around the pool area. Candles and hurricane lamps were placed strategically throughout the grounds. The catering team arrived and began setting up their stations in the kitchen and on the deck. Miss Mitchell, where would you like us to set up the champagne tower? The head caterer asked, consulting her tablet. We have 24 cases of Dom Perignon arriving at 4. I was about to answer when my phone rang. Natalie's name flashed on the screen. Excuse me, I said to the caterer. Let me take this. Daniel can show you the options we discussed. I stepped into my office and closed the door before answering. Hey, Nat. Is everything okay? Not really. My sister sighed. I just had a major fight with Mom and Dad. About coming to my party? Among other things. She paused. Sam, I don't even know how to tell you this, but they're saying some pretty awful things about you to everyone. I couldn't stay silent anymore. My heart sank. What are they saying now? Dad told Uncle Robert that your tech company was nothing special, and that the only reason it sold was because you got lucky with timing. And Mom is telling her friends that your new house was an impulsive purchase that shows your financial immaturity. Each word was like a dagger. Even now, with undeniable evidence of my success, they were trying to diminish me. I finally snapped, Natalie continued. I told them they should be proud of you instead of jealous. That's when Dad lost it. He said I was being disloyal and that I was choosing Samantha over family. As if you're not family too? I closed my eyes, feeling a familiar ache. Nat, I never wanted to put you in this position. If coming tomorrow is going to cause more problems for you, I'm coming, she interrupted firmly. I've spent too many years trying to keep the peace at your expense. It's time I stood up for my sister. After we hung up, I leaned against my desk, trying to process this latest development. My parents weren't just refusing to celebrate my success, they were actively working to undermine it. The fifth betrayal Natalie had mentioned yesterday wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of an ongoing campaign. A knock at my office door interrupted my thoughts. It was the florist, needing approval on the final arrangement for the center dining table. I plastered on a smile and followed her out, determined not to let my family drama overshadow the preparations. By late afternoon, the villa had been transformed. The caterers were preparing appetizers in the kitchen. The bartenders were setting up stations on the deck and by the pool. The band was doing a sound check in the living room, which had been cleared of furniture to create space for dancing. As I was inspecting the final touches, my phone buzzed with a text from Craig Donovan, the venture capitalist from my parents' social circle. Samantha, looking forward to tomorrow. Bringing Jordan Powell from TechCorp, he's interested in what you're doing next. I stared at the text in disbelief. Jordan Powell was the head of acquisitions at TechCorp, the company that had bought Quantum Shield. His presence at my party would be noticed by everyone in the tech world and would undoubtedly get back to my parents. I was still processing this development when Amanda arrived, breezing through the front door with her usual energy. This place is even more spectacular than the photos, she exclaimed, dropping her bag to hug me. You did it, Sam. You really did it. For the first time that day, I felt a genuine smile spread across my face. Amanda had been there from the beginning, through the all-night coding sessions, the rejections from investors, the client pitches, and the eventual triumph. If anyone understood the significance of this moment, it was her. I wish I could feel as excited as you look, I admitted as we walked out to the deck. Your parents, she guessed. And I nodded. I just found out they're telling people my house was an impulsive purchase that shows my financial immaturity. After telling everyone they were secret investors in my company, that they actually tried to sabotage. It's like they can't stand the idea of me succeeding without them. Amanda's expression hardened. Some parents can't handle when their children outgrow the boxes they put them in. It threatens their whole worldview. I know, I sighed. I just always thought that eventually, if I achieved enough, they'd come around. The problem was never your achievements, Daniel said, joining us with glasses of wine. It was their inability to see your worth beyond their own narrow definition of success. The three of us stood watching the sunset, the sky ablaze with color as the sun dipped toward the horizon. Tomorrow will be amazing, Amanda said, clinking her glass against mine. You've created something beautiful here, not just this house, but this life. You've earned every bit of it. Later that night, after Amanda and her boyfriend had gone to their hotel and Daniel was asleep, I stood alone on the deck. The moon cast a silver path across the water, and the sound of waves breaking against the shore filled the night air. I thought about the journey that had led me here, from the little girl desperate for her parents' approval to the woman who had built something valuable enough that a tech giant wanted to own it. I thought about the betrayals, the dismissals, the constant undermining. But I also thought about Amanda's unwavering friendship, Daniel's steadfast support, and Natalie's belated but meaningful solidarity. My parents had chosen not to be part of my celebration. That was their loss, not mine. Tomorrow would be about the people who had chosen to believe in me, to support me, to celebrate with me. Their presence would fill my home with more warmth and genuine joy than my parents' approval ever could. As I turned to go inside, my phone buzzed with a notification from my security system. Motion detected at the front gate. I opened the app to see the camera feed, but whatever had triggered the alert was gone. Probably just a raccoon or coyote, I thought. I had no idea that in less than 24 hours, that same alert would signal the beginning of a confrontation 5 years in the making. The next evening arrived with the kind of perfect sunset that makes Southern California real estate worth its extravagant price tag. The sky was painted in broad strokes of orange, pink, and lavender, the ocean reflecting the colors like a living mirror. As the first guests began to arrive, I stood in my entryway, taking deep breaths, smoothing non-existent wrinkles from my midnight blue dress. "You look stunning," Daniel whispered, appearing beside me in his charcoal suit. "Ready to make some jaws drop?" I smiled, drawing strength from his presence. As I'll ever be. The first wave of arrivals included former colleagues from Quantum Shield, tech industry friends, and several of my earliest supporters. Their reactions as they entered the villa validated every penny of my investment-wide eyes taking in the soaring ceilings, gasps as they glimpsed the ocean view through the floor-to-ceiling windows, exclamations over the infinity pool that seemed to merge with the horizon. "Samantha, this is absolutely breathtaking," said Dr. Eleanor Jenkins, my computer science professor from undergrad, who had encouraged me when everyone else had doubts. She hugged me tightly. "I always knew you were destined for extraordinary things." "I wouldn't be here without your guidance," I replied, meaning it. Eleanor had been the first person to tell me my ideas had commercial potential, the first to suggest I consider entrepreneurship instead of the corporate path my parents had planned. Michael Chen, one of my first employees who had worked 80-hour weeks with me during Quantum Shield's critical growth phase, whistled as he looked around. Talk about a level up from that cramped office in Seattle. Remember when we had to take turns sitting at the one desk with a working outlet? I laughed, the memory surprisingly sweet now that the struggle was behind us. And the coffee maker that would only work if you hit it in exactly the right spot? Worth every all-nighter, he grinned, raising his champagne flute. By 7:30, the party was in full swing. The caterers circulated with trays of elegant appetizers. The bartenders mixed signature cocktails I'd named after Quantum Shield's proprietary algorithms. The jazz band played softly in the background, providing a sophisticated soundtrack without overwhelming conversation. I was in the middle of chatting with a group of former colleagues when I spotted Natalie entering alone, looking slightly uncomfortable in a simple black dress. I excused myself and hurried to greet her. "You came," I said, hugging her tightly. "Of course I came," she replied, though her smile seemed strained. "I told you I would." As I led her through the house, introducing her to people, I noticed her checking her phone repeatedly. "Everything okay?" I asked after the third time. "Yeah, fine," she answered too quickly. "This place is incredible, Sam. I had no idea it would be so magnificent." "Wait until you see the view from the primary suite," I said, linking my arm through hers. "Come on, I'll give you the tour while it's still light enough to see the coastline." As we walked through the house, Natalie grew more tense rather than more relaxed. In the primary bedroom, with its panoramic ocean views, she finally cracked. "Sam, I need to tell you something." She perched on the edge of my bed, twisting her hands together. "Mom and Dad, they might be coming after all." I froze. "What?" "They found out Craig Donovan would be here. And apparently Jordan Powell from TechCorp. Dad nearly had a stroke when he heard. They were arguing about it when I left." My mind raced. They rejected my invitation. Explicitly. With a lecture about flaunting wealth and abandoning family traditions. "I know," Natalie sighed. "But the thought of all these important people here, people from their social circle seeing your success firsthand, it's driving them crazy. Dad keeps saying he needs to control the narrative. The familiar ache of disappointment mixed with a new emotion, something like vindication. They weren't coming because they were proud of me or wanted to celebrate my achievement. They were coming because they were afraid of how my success would reflect on them." Before I could respond, Amanda appeared in the doorway, her expression a mix of excitement and surprise. "Sam, You're not going to believe who just arrived. That journalist from Tech Insider, Jessica Parker? She says she's here to do a feature on tech's new elite at home. She's brought a photographer. My eyes widened. Jessica Parker was a respected technology journalist whose profiles could make or break reputations in Silicon Valley. I didn't invite her. Craig Donovan did, Amanda replied. He thought it would be good publicity for whatever you're planning next. She's asking for you downstairs. Natalie and I exchanged looks. If Mom and Dad show up and there's press here, she trailed off. It'll be interesting. I finished, straightening my shoulders. Come on. Let's go be good hostesses. Downstairs, the party had grown livelier. Jessica Parker, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s with a sleek bob, was chatting with Jordan Powell near the windows overlooking the ocean. The photographer accompanying her was discreetly capturing candid shots of guests mingling. Samantha Mitchell, Jessica said when I approached, extending her hand. Your reputation precedes you. Craig Donovan tells me you're the one to watch in cybersecurity's next wave. That's very kind of him, I replied, shaking her hand. Though I'm currently enjoying some well-deserved time off. Which makes this the perfect moment to feature you, she smiled. The woman behind the algorithm. At home. Would you mind if we did a short interview later? Perhaps a tour of your stunning property? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed in my clutch. I glanced down to see a security alert. Unknown visitors at the front gate. My heart stuttered as I opened the app to view the camera feed. My parents stood at the gate, my father in a tuxedo that had clearly been intended for the country club gala, my mother in an evening gown and pearls. They looked impatient. My father repeatedly pressing the intercom button. Excuse me, I said to Jessica. My mouth suddenly dry. I need to handle something. Amanda can show you around in the meantime. I stepped into the relative quiet of my office to respond to the intercom. Hello? Samantha, we're here for your party. My father's voice came through, artificially jovial. Seems your gate system isn't working properly. I closed my eyes, centering myself. I didn't expect you. You declined my invitation. We reconsidered, my mother chimed in. We didn't want to miss your special day. The lie was so transparent I almost laughed. They hadn't wanted to miss seeing Craig, Donovan, Jordan Powell, and who knew how many other influential people gathering at their daughter's multi-million-dollar oceanfront villa. I had a choice to make. I could refuse them entry a petty revenge that would bring momentary satisfaction but ultimately more drama. Or I could let them in and set terms for their presence. I'll be right down, I said finally, ending the call. I found Daniel by the bar. My parents are at the gate, I told him in a low voice. Apparently they've reconsidered my invitation. His eyebrows rose. What do you want to do? I'm going down to talk to them. If you don't see us all come back up in 15 minutes, send a search party. He squeezed my hand. I've got your back. Always. The walk down the long, winding driveway to the front gate gave me time to compose myself. By the time I reached the ornate iron gates, I had transformed nervous energy into quiet determination. My parents stood on the other side, looking uncomfortable and out of place. My mother's eyes widened as she took in the sprawling property, the glimpses of the house visible through the trees. My father's expression was harder to read, somewhere between impressed and resentful. Samantha. He nodded as if this were a business meeting. Quite a place you have here. Thank you, I replied coolly. I'm surprised to see you both. Your message was quite clear about your feelings regarding my display of wealth. My mother at least had the grace to look embarrassed. We may have been hasty in our judgment. After reflection, we felt we should support you after all. The lie hung in the air between us. After 5 years of dismissals, betrayals, and active sabotage, they expected me to believe they'd had a sudden change of heart. Natalie mentioned you might be coming, I said, watching their reactions closely. Right after she told me you've been claiming to be silent partners in my company. A company you tried to undermine at every turn. My father's face flushed. That's an exaggeration. We were concerned about your choices, that's all. Parents worry. Is that what you call it? Worry? I crossed my arms. Was it worry that led you to tell potential investors my company was doomed to fail? Was it concern that made you tell the Hendersons I was going through a phase? Samantha, this isn't the time or place, my mother began. Actually, I think it's exactly the time and place, I interrupted. Before I open these gates, I need to know why you're really here. And don't insult me by pretending it's because you're proud of me. My father glanced at his watch. Impatience overtaking diplomacy. We heard Craig Donovan would be attending. And Jordan Powell. It seemed like an opportunity to reconnect. The sixth betrayal slipped out so casually he didn't even realize what he'd revealed. They weren't here for me. They were here for networking opportunities. As if to confirm my thoughts, my father's phone rang. He stepped aside to answer it, speaking in low tones. Yes. I'm at Samantha's party now. No, not inside yet. Yes. I understand Jordan Powell is here. I'm planning to discuss the Westridge account with him. Ice filled my veins. He was literally arranging business networking at my housewarming before even getting through the front gate. I'll open the gate, I said when he returned, my voice unnaturally calm. But we're going to have a conversation first, right here. Samantha, guests are waiting, my mother protested. Yes, my guests at MY Home, I emphasized. And before you join them, we're going to acknowledge some truths. I looked directly at my father. Truth number 1. You did not support my company. You actively tried to sabotage it. You told investors not to fund me. You spread rumors about my stability. You questioned my competence to anyone who would listen. His jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. Truth number 2. You are not now, nor have you ever been, silent partners in my business. You contributed exactly $0 and negative support. My mother looked away, unable to meet my eyes. Truth number 3. You're here tonight not because you want to celebrate my success, but because you're afraid of being left out of the connections and opportunities my success has created. My father's face darkened. That's not fair, Samantha. We're your parents. You have exactly 2 choices. I cut him off. You can turn around now and go back to your country club gala. Or you can come in as my guests, acknowledge that my success is my own, and behave like supportive parents for one night. But if you choose the second option and I hear even a whisper of you taking credit for my work or trying to use my home as a networking venue, you'll be asked to leave. Immediately, they stared at me, clearly unaccustomed to this assertiveness from their perpetually disappointing younger daughter. What's it going to be? I asked, my hand hovering over the gate control. My father straightened his bow tie. We'd like to attend your housewarming, Samantha. On my terms? A pause. Then a stiff nod. On your terms. I pressed the button, and the gates slowly swung open. As we walked back up the driveway toward the house, the gulf between us felt wider than ever, even as we moved physically closer together. The party was about to get considerably more complicated. When we reached the villa, the party was in full swing. Laughter and conversation mingled with the jazz band's smooth melodies, creating a sophisticated ambiance that perfectly suited the oceanfront setting. Servers circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres, while guests clustered in conversation groups throughout the main level and spilled onto the deck overlooking the water. My parents paused in the entryway, taking in the scene. I watched their expressions shift from thinly veiled disapproval to something more complex as they registered the caliber of people in attendance. Craig Donovan was engaged in animated conversation with Jordan Powell by the fireplace. Jessica Parker, the journalist, was interviewing a former Quantum Shield executive near the windows. Amanda was charming a group by the bar, while Daniel supervised the caterers refreshing the appetizer displays. Quite a gathering, my father commented, his tone suggesting he was reassessing the situation. The networking potential clearly exceeded his expectations. Let me introduce you to some people, I said, steering them toward a less populated corner where Natalie stood with a couple of my former colleagues. Her eyes widened when she saw us approach. Mom, Dad. She greeted them with visible tension. I didn't know you were coming. Last-minute decision, my mother replied smoothly, kissing Natalie's cheek. We couldn't miss Samantha's special day after all. My colleagues diplomatically excused themselves, leaving the 4 of us in an uncomfortable cluster. The air between us felt charged with unspoken accusations and old resentments. Beautiful home, Samantha. My mother offered after an awkward silence. The view is spectacular. Thank you, I replied, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing server. It's exactly what I wanted. A place that's entirely mine. My father's eyes narrowed slightly at the implied message, but before he could respond, Craig Donovan approached. "Richard Mitchell," he exclaimed, clapping my father on the shoulder. "I thought that was you. What a surprise to see you here. I'd heard you had a country club commitment tonight." My father forced a smile. We rearranged our schedule. Couldn't miss our daughter's housewarming. "A wise decision," Craig replied, glancing around appreciatively. "Samantha has made quite a name for herself. That quantum shield encryption protocol was revolutionary. Companies are still scrambling to match it." "Yes. Well, she always had an aptitude for computers," my father said, as though discussing a child's hobby rather than a multi-million-dollar innovation. I bit my tongue, remembering our agreement at the gate. "More than an aptitude," Craig corrected him. "I tried to invest in her Series A round but got shut out by Benchmark. Biggest missed opportunity of that year." He turned to me. "Samantha, Jordan was asking about your non-compete clause. When does it expire?" 3 months, I answered, noting how my father's attention sharpened. "I have some ideas I'm exploring." "I'd love to hear them," Craig said. "Let's talk next week. I'll have my assistant set something up." As he moved on to greet other guests, my father leaned in. "You didn't mention you were planning a new venture. Perhaps we should discuss it. I have some connections who might be interested." The audacity was breathtaking. After years of undermining me, he now wanted to insert himself into my next project? "I think I've got the connections covered," I replied, keeping my voice level. "But thanks for the offer." His face tightened with barely concealed irritation. My mother, sensing tension, quickly intervened. "Samantha, why don't you show us around? We'd love to see the rest of your home." I led them through the main level, pointing out features with detached politeness. My mother commented on the decor with superficial admiration, while my father remained largely silent, his eyes calculating as he assessed the property's value. As we reached the deck overlooking the ocean, we encountered Jessica Parker conducting an interview with Daniel. She brightened when she saw me. "Samantha." Perfect timing. "And these must be your parents?" "Yes," I confirmed, making the introductions. "Richard and Patricia Mitchell. Jessica Parker from Tech Insider." "We're so proud of Samantha," my mother said with practiced charm. "She's always been remarkably determined." "I'd love to include you in my piece," Jessica said. "The family behind the tech prodigy. How did you nurture such entrepreneurial spirit?" I held my breath, waiting for their response. This was exactly the sort of opportunity my father would typically exploit, a chance to rewrite history in a prominent publication. "Actually," my father began, "we've always encouraged traditional paths. Law, medicine." Samantha chose a different direction. Not technically a lie, but a masterful evasion of the truth. He hadn't mentioned their active discouragement, their attempts to sabotage my funding, or their claims of being silent partners. Against considerable resistance, Daniel added mildly, giving my hand a subtle squeeze. Samantha succeeded despite significant obstacles. Jessica's journalistic instincts visibly perked up. Obstacles? That sounds intriguing. My father's smile hardened. Every successful person faces challenges. Samantha was fortunate to have family resources and connections to draw upon. And there it was, the 7th betrayal unfolding in real time. After promising to respect my terms just an hour ago, he was already rewriting my story, inserting himself as a supportive figure rather than the adversary he'd actually been. "Family resources?" I echoed, unable to remain silent. "You mean the college fund you gave to Natalie without telling me? Or perhaps you're referring to the investors you warned against funding my doomed company?" The atmosphere instantly chilled. Jessica looked between us with undisguised interest. "Samantha," my mother warned quietly, "this isn't the place." "It never is it?" I replied. "Not at family dinners, not at holiday gatherings, and certainly not in front of the people you're trying to impress." My father's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "You're making a scene." "No, Dad. I'm telling the truth." I turned to Jessica. "If you want the real story, it's this. I built Quantum Shield without a penny of family support. In fact, my parents actively discouraged potential investors and told everyone it was a phase I was going through. Jessica's eyes widened as she sensed a much more compelling angle than she'd anticipated. Perhaps we should discuss this privately, my father suggested tersely. Why? I challenged. You had no problem publicly undermining me for years. You had no problem telling the Hendersons I was going through a crisis. You had no problem advising Craig Donovan against investing in my hobby project. Daniel placed a protective hand on my back, a silent show of support that gave me courage to continue. The truth is, you're here tonight not because you're proud of me, but because you're afraid of how my success makes you look. You rejected my invitation until you found out who would be attending. You came to network, not to celebrate with me. A few nearby guests had fallen silent, awkwardly pretending not to listen while catching every word. That's not true, my mother protested weakly. We love you, Samantha. You love the idea of me, the daughter who follows your rules, meets your expectations, and makes you look good to your friends. You've never loved the actual me. The raw truth hung in the air between us. My father's expression shifted from anger to something colder, more calculated. If that's how you feel, perhaps we should leave, he said stiffly. Perhaps you should, I agreed, surprising myself with how steady my voice remained. My mother looked shocked. Samantha, you can't mean that. We're your parents. Yes, you are. And I've spent my entire life trying to earn your approval. But I'm done now. I gestured to the villa, the ocean view, the successful guests mingling throughout. All of this I built without you. Despite you, actually. I don't need your approval anymore. Daniel's hand tightened reassuringly on my back. My father straightened his tie, attempting to regain composure. You're being dramatic and ungrateful. If that's your attitude, we'll go. Come, Patricia. My mother hesitated, torn between her husband and her daughter. For a brief moment, I thought she might stay, might finally choose me. But then she reached for her purse. This isn't how family behaves, Samantha, she said quietly. No, I agreed. It isn't. They turned to leave, my father's back rigid with indignation, my mother's shoulders slumped in defeat. As they walked away, Natalie appeared at my side. I'm staying, she said firmly. Loud enough for our parents to hear. My father paused, turning back with disbelief. Natalie, we're leaving. You are, she corrected him. I'm staying with my sister. The look he gave her held the same disappointment I'd seen directed at me countless times, a powerful tool he'd wielded to keep us in line. But for the first time, it didn't work. Then you're both making a mistake, he said coldly. No, Dad, Natalie replied. For the first time, we're both making our own choices. He shook his head in disgust and continued toward the exit, my mother trailing behind him after one last uncertain glance at us. As the door closed behind them, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Relief, grief, vindication, and a strange sense of liberation. For so long, I had defined myself in relation to their approval or disapproval. Without that framework, who was I? Daniel's arm circled my waist. You okay? I took a deep breath, looking out at the ocean stretching endlessly before us. I will be. Jessica Parker was still standing nearby, her expression a mixture of professional interest and genuine concern. I should give you some space, she said tactfully. Actually, I replied, I think I'm ready to tell my real story. The whole story. If you're still interested. She smiled. More than ever. As we moved to a quieter corner to talk, I caught sight of Amanda watching me with proud approval. Natalie stood beside her, looking both shaken and somehow lighter. For the first time in my adult life, I felt truly free to be exactly who I was, not who my parents wanted me to be, but the woman who had built something valuable enough to change the world. That woman was more than enough. The exodus of my parents created a momentary ripple through the party. Guests who had witnessed our confrontation pretended they hadn't, suddenly finding their champagne glasses or the ocean view utterly fascinating. But the sophisticated crowd recovered quickly, conversation resuming with only the occasional curious glance in my direction. I need a moment, I whispered to Daniel, slipping away toward the relative sanctuary of the primary suite upstairs. Once alone, I sat on the edge of my bed, hands slightly shaking as adrenaline continued to course through my system. 5 years of repressed emotions had erupted in one cathartic confrontation. I should have felt devastated by the finality of our rift, but instead, I felt oddly peaceful. The constant need for parental approval that had driven so many of my actions, even as I rebelled against it, had finally broken its hold on me. A soft knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. "Sam? It's me." Natalie's voice. "Can I come in?" I opened the door to find my sister looking both concerned and strangely exhilarated. "Are you okay?" she asked, sitting beside me on the bed. "Surprisingly, yes," I admitted. "I feel like I can finally breathe. But what about you? You just stood up to them for the first time in your life." Natalie gave a shaky laugh. "I'm terrified. And also, relieved? Is that weird? It feels like I've been playing a part my entire life, and I just went off script for the first time." I squeezed her hand. "Welcome to the dark side. We have cookies and self-respect." She laughed more genuinely this time. "I can't believe I never saw it before, how they manipulated us against each other. Made me the good daughter and you the disappointment. It was never about either of us as people. It was about their control." "Better late than never," I said, without bitterness. For the first time, I was seeing my sister as a potential ally rather than a parental extension. "We should get back to your guests," Natalie suggested after a moment. "I think you might actually enjoy your party now." When we returned downstairs, Amanda immediately appeared at my side, champagne flute in hand. "Drink this. You've earned it," she commanded, then lowered her voice. "Your parents just tried to come back in, by the way. Security turned them away per your instructions." "They what?" I nearly choked on my champagne. "Apparently, your father realized Craig Donovan and Jordan Powell were still here and decided his networking needs outweighed his pride," Amanda explained with undisguised satisfaction. "Daniel told security not to let them back in unless you specifically authorized it." The thought of my father being denied entrance to an exclusive gathering, perhaps for the first time in his privileged life, was almost too delicious to process. "Miss Mitchell?" A server approached discreetly. "The photographer would like to gather everyone for a group photo on the deck in about 15 minutes, if that's agreeable." I nodded, suddenly eager to document this evening. Not as the hollow victory over my parents I'd initially envisioned, but as a genuine celebration of the relationships that had actually supported me. As I moved through my home, I noticed something had shifted in how guests were interacting with me. Before my parents' dramatic departure, there had been the usual deference accorded to wealth and success, polite, somewhat performative admiration. Now, there was something warmer, more authentic. People approached me with genuine curiosity rather than networking calculation. "I had no idea what you went through to build Quantum Shield," said Maria Lopez, a fellow tech founder I'd known peripherally for years. "My parents were the same way when I left medical school to start my company. They didn't speak to me for a year." "How did you handle it?" I asked, surprised by her candor. "Built a support system of people who actually believed in me," she replied. "Eventually, my parents came around when they saw I wasn't going to fail or come crawling back." "Sounds like yours might be a tougher case." "You could say that," I agreed with a wry smile. Across the room, I spotted Jessica Parker interviewing Amanda, who was gesturing animatedly. From the serious expression on the journalist's face, I suspected she was getting the unvarnished version of my journey. Craig Donovan approached, drink in hand. "Samantha, I owe you an apology," he said, surprising me. "Your father told me years ago that your venture was a family hobby project that wasn't worth serious investment. I should have done my own due diligence instead of taking his word." The confirmation of my father's sabotage should have hurt, but instead it felt validating. "Water under the bridge," I replied. "Though I'm curious why you decided to come tonight if you thought my success was a fluke." He had the grace to look embarrassed. "Jordan Powell mentioned he was interested in what you might do next. That got my attention. When I looked into your actual track record without your father's editorializing, I realized I'd missed an opportunity. I'm hoping not to make the same mistake twice." "Funny how success changes perceptions," I observed. "It does," he acknowledged candidly. But genuine innovation is rarer than money in this industry. You've proven you have both. As Craig moved on, Daniel appeared at my side. "Having fun yet?" he asked, slipping an arm around my waist. "Getting there," I admitted, though I'm still processing what happened with my parents. "Speaking of which," he said carefully, "I need to tell you something. When your father realized he couldn't get back in, he tried a different approach. He's been calling guests anyone whose number he has, telling them he's been your silent advisor all along and that he's proud of his little girl finally finding success with his guidance." The seventh betrayal continued, even after being explicitly exposed. Instead of feeling angry, I felt almost pity for his desperate attempt to insert himself into my narrative. "Let him try," I said with newfound serenity. "Everyone who matters knows the truth now." The photographer began gathering people on the deck for the group photo. As we assembled against the backdrop of the illuminated infinity pool and darkening ocean horizon, I found myself surrounded by people who had actually been part of my journey, Amanda and Daniel flanking me, Natalie nearby, former employees and supporters filling in the spaces. "Everyone say, 'Success,'" the photographer called. As camera flashes illuminated the genuine smiles around me, I realized something profound. I had been seeking the wrong kind of validation all along. True success wasn't proving my worth to those who were determined not to see it. It was building something meaningful with people who recognized my value from the beginning. Later, as the party began winding down, Jordan Powell sought me out. "I understand your non-compete clause expires soon," he said without preamble. "TechCorp would be interested in discussing your next venture, or perhaps bringing you on as an innovation consultant." 5 years ago, such validation from the tech giant that had acquired my company would have been the ultimate vindication, something to wave in my parents' faces as proof of my worth. Now, it felt like just another business conversation. Pleasant, but not defining. "I'll consider it," I replied, "though I'm exploring several options." He handed me his card. "Think about it. You've got a rare combination of technical brilliance and business instinct. That's worth nurturing." As Jordan walked away, Amanda sidled up beside me. "Look at you, being courted by TechCorp while your father is outside begging for scraps of connection," she whispered with fierce pride. "If that's not poetic justice, I don't know what is." The last guests began departing around midnight, exchanging business cards and warm goodbyes. Jessica Parker was among the last to leave, her notebook filled with what promised to be a much different story than the simple tech elite at home piece she'd originally planned. "This will be published next Thursday," she told me. "I'll send you a link. And, Samantha, thank you for your honesty. It's refreshing in this industry." As the caterers began discreet cleanup operations, I found myself on the deck with the 3 people who mattered most: Daniel, Amanda, and surprisingly, Natalie. The 4 of us sat in comfortable silence, watching the moonlight play across the waves. "So," Amanda finally said, "how does it feel to have hosted the most dramatic housewarming in Malibu history?" "Exhausting," I admitted with a laugh. "But also, right. Somehow. Like everything that happened tonight needed to happen." Natalie nodded thoughtfully. "It's strange. I've spent my whole life trying to be what they wanted, following their plan, and watching you stand up to them tonight made me realize I've never actually asked myself what I want." "It's not too late to start," I told her gently. "I know," she said. "That's why I'm thinking about taking a sabbatical from the hospital. Maybe volunteering with Doctors Without Borders for a few months. Something they'd never approve of." To new beginnings, Daniel proposed, raising his glass. As we clinked glasses, I looked around at the beautiful home I'd created and the authentic relationships I'd built. My parents had failed to show up for the most important moments of my life, not just this housewarming, but every step of my journey. Yet, somehow, their absence had created space for people who truly saw and supported me. The tables had turned in the most unexpected way. What had begun as an attempt to prove my worth to my parents had transformed into the recognition that their approval had never been the prize I thought it was. The real victory was in living authentically, surrounded by people who valued the real me, not some idealized version I could never become. As the ocean waves crashed rhythmically against the shore below, I felt more at home than I ever had in my parents' house. Not because of the expensive architecture or stunning views, but because this space reflected who I truly was: imperfect, determined, and finally, unapologetically authentic. The main party had wound down, but a core group remained. Amanda and her boyfriend, Daniel, Natalie, and a handful of close friends from Quantum Shield. We had migrated to the more intimate setting of the outdoor dining area, where the caterers had set up a midnight buffet before departing. Candles flickered in hurricane lamps, casting a warm glow over the faces of people I genuinely cared about. "I'd like to propose a toast," I said, raising my glass. "Not to success or wealth or any of the trappings, but to authenticity. To having the courage to be who you really are, even when the people who should support you the most try to make you someone else." "To authenticity," they echoed, glasses clinking. I had just taken a sip when my phone vibrated with another security alert. With a sense of dread, I checked the camera feed to see my parents once again at the gate. My father was leaning on the intercom button, his posture radiating entitlement and indignation. "They're back," I sighed, showing the screen to Daniel. "Want me to handle it?" he offered. I shook my head. "No, this is my battle. Always has been." I stood, suddenly resolute. "Actually, you know what? I want all of you to come with me." "Are you sure?" Amanda asked, concern evident in her expression. "Absolutely," I replied. "I'm done with private manipulations and secret undermining. If they want to have this confrontation, we'll have it with witnesses." We made our way down to the gate, a somewhat absurd procession of evening wear-clad supporters trailing behind me like a protective entourage. My parents' eyes widened at the sight of us approaching en masse. "This is ridiculous, Samantha," my father called through the gate. "Having us barred from your party like common intruders. You chose to leave," I reminded him calmly, "and then chose to try returning after I made my boundaries clear." "We're still your parents," my mother insisted. "You can't just cut us off because of one disagreement." "One disagreement?" I laughed incredulously. "You've been undermining me for years. Tonight was just the culmination." My father's face hardened. "We came back to give you one more chance to behave reasonably. Jordan Powell is still here, isn't he? I have a business proposition that could benefit all of us." The naked opportunism was stunning. Even now, he saw me only as a potential connection to further his own interests. "Dad," Natalie said quietly beside me, "do you even hear yourself? This is Samantha's night, her achievement, and you're still trying to make it about you." "Stay out of this, Natalie," he snapped. "This is between your sister and us." "No," Natalie countered with newfound confidence. "It's not. I've watched you undermine and dismiss Samantha for years while I stayed silent. I'm complicit in how you've treated her, and I'm done with it." My father's expression darkened. "I see she's poisoned you against us too." "That's the 8th betrayal," I said, almost to myself. "What?" My mother looked confused. "The 8th betrayal," I repeated louder. "First, you took my college fund without telling me. Second, you spread rumors about my mental stability when I started my company. Third, you advised investors against funding me. Fourth, you refused to attend my housewarming while planning to attend a country club event. Fifth, you claimed to be silent partners in my success while actively trying to sabotage it. Sixth, you showed up here only because you found out important business connections would be present. Seventh, you tried to take credit for my success to Jessica Parker's face after promising not to. And now the 8th, accusing me of poisoning Natalie rather than accepting that your behavior speaks for itself." My recitation left them momentarily speechless. "You've been counting," my mother finally said, her voice small. "Every single one," I confirmed, while still desperately hoping you might eventually be proud of me. "But I realize now that's never going to happen, because my success doesn't fit your narrative of how life should work." "That's not true," my father protested, though weakly. "We want what's best for you." "No," I corrected him. "You want what's best for your image. There's a difference." I felt Daniel's hand on my shoulder, a silent show of support that gave me the strength to continue. "I'm going back inside now to have dinner with people who actually care about me, not what I can do for them. You're welcome to join us, but only if you can finally acknowledge that my success is my own, and that your behavior has been destructive." My father's face flushed with anger. "This is how you speak to us? After everything we've done for you? What exactly have you done for me?" I challenged. "Name one way you've supported my career. One time, you celebrated my success without trying to diminish it or take credit for it." His silence was damning. "That's what I thought," I said quietly. "Richard," my mother tugged at his sleeve, embarrassment finally overtaking her. "Perhaps we should go home and discuss this later." "No." He shook her off, anger overtaking diplomacy. "I want to know when my daughter became so ungrateful, so selfish." Something in me snapped at his words. All the careful restraint I'd maintained crumbled under the weight of years of suppressed hurt and rage. "Selfish?" I repeated, voice rising. "I built a company that protects people's data from exploitation. I created jobs for dozens of talented people. I'm the one who's selfish? You abandoned the path we laid out for you," he shot back. "The connections we cultivated, the opportunities we created. For what? To play with computers? To change the world," I shouted. "Which I did, while you were busy attending country club galas and judging me for not becoming a carbon copy of you." The raw emotion in my voice seemed to startle everyone, including myself. I rarely raised my voice, trained from childhood to maintain composure at all costs. But years of contained pain had finally found their outlet. "Tell me the truth," I demanded, my voice slightly calmer but intense. "Are you angry because I chose a different path, or because I succeeded without your help? Is it my independence that bothers you? Or the fact that I've achieved more than you thought possible?" My father's expression shifted from anger to something more vulnerable, a flash of insecurity quickly masked by indignation. It was a revelation. Beneath his dismissiveness had always been fear. Fear that I might outshine him, might prove his worldview wrong, might demonstrate that his way wasn't the only path to success. "You have no idea the sacrifices we made for you," he deflected, but his voice lacked conviction. "And you have no idea the obstacles I overcame because of you," I countered. "Do you know how many doors closed in my face because you told people my business was a hobby? Do you know how much harder I had to work because you undermined me at every turn?" My mother stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "Samantha, we never meant to hurt you. We were trying to protect you from disappointment." "No," Natalie interjected unexpectedly. "That's not true, Mom. You were protecting yourselves, your image, your control, your narrative. You couldn't handle Sam succeeding in a way you didn't understand or approve of." Our mother's face crumpled. "That's not fair, Natalie. Isn't it?" Natalie pressed. "You've been calling me for years, complaining about how embarrassing it is that Samantha won't settle down or get a real job. Even after her company sold for millions. Even after she was featured in business magazines. It was never about her welfare. It was about your reputation." The brutal honesty hung in the air between us. For perhaps the first time, we were speaking the unvarnished truth about our family dynamic. "I think," my mother said shakily, "we should go home now." "Yes," my father agreed stiffly. "This conversation is clearly pointless. When you're ready to apologize for your behavior tonight, Samantha, you know where to find us." I stared at him in disbelief. Even now, faced with the consequences of years of emotional manipulation, he expected me to be the one to apologize. "I won't be apologizing," I said with quiet certainty. "But I will be living my life on my terms, without your approval or permission." "And I'll be joining her," Natalie added, linking her arm through mine in solidarity. My father's face hardened into a mask of cold fury. "Then you're both making a terrible mistake. If this is how you choose to treat us, perhaps we should reconsider our relationships with both of you." "Are you threatening to disown us?" Natalie asked, incredulously. "Because we won't conform to your expectations?" "We're simply acknowledging reality," he replied icily. "Family loyalty goes both ways." "No, Dad," I said, suddenly tired of the circular argument. "Family support goes both ways. And we've been giving far more than we've received. Come on, Richard." My mother tugged at his arm more insistently. "This isn't the place." With a final look of wounded dignity, they turned and walked toward their car, parked just outside the property gates. As they drove away, headlights briefly illuminating the road before disappearing around a curve. I felt an odd mixture of grief and liberation. Well, Amanda broke the stunned silence. That was intense. A slightly hysterical laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep inside me, releasing tension I hadn't realized I was holding. Soon we were all laughing not from humor, but from the sheer emotional catharsis of the moment. "God, I need a drink," Natalie declared as we walked back up to the house. "Preferably something stronger than champagne." "I think we all do," Daniel agreed. Back at the house, our small group reassembled on the deck. Amanda's boyfriend, who had wisely remained silent during the confrontation, mixed strong cocktails for everyone. The atmosphere had transformed the artificial social veneer completely stripped away, leaving something raw but authentic in its place. "I'd like to revise my earlier toast," I said, raising my glass once more. "To chosen family. To the people who support us because of who we are, not despite it." To chosen family, everyone echoed with genuine emotion. As we settled into comfortable conversation under the stars, the weight I'd been carrying for years began to lift. My parents had walked away, but I wasn't alone. Far from it. I was surrounded by people who valued me for exactly who I was, my strengths, my flaws, my ambitions, and my quirks. The confrontation that had seemed so devastating in prospect had ultimately been liberating in execution. Like lancing a long, festering wound, the pain had been necessary for healing to begin. Later, as we shared stories and laughter against the backdrop of moonlight on water, I realized something profound. The breaking point hadn't destroyed me. It had set me free. The morning after my housewarming, I awoke before sunrise. The house was quiet, with Natalie asleep in one of the guest rooms and Daniel still slumbering beside me. I slipped out of bed, wrapped myself in a soft robe, and padded quietly to the deck to watch the dawn break over the Pacific. The sky gradually transformed from inky darkness to soft lavender, then pink and gold as the sun crept above the horizon. Waves rolled gently toward the shore, their rhythm constant and soothing. Nature's persistence, the reliable cycle of day following night, tide following tide, felt reassuring after the emotional turbulence of the previous evening. I thought about the confrontation with my parents, replaying moments that had been simultaneously painful and liberating. For so long, I had defined myself in relation to their approval or disapproval. Even my rebellion had been a response to their expectations, a negative imprint rather than a true expression of self. Who was I beyond that dynamic? It was both terrifying and exhilarating to contemplate. The sliding door opened behind me, and Natalie emerged with 2 steaming mugs of coffee. "Thought you might need this," she said, handing one to me. "Thanks." I accepted the mug gratefully. "How did you sleep?" "Surprisingly well," she replied, settling into the chair beside me. "Maybe the best in years, actually. Is that weird?" "Not at all," I assured her. "There's something freeing about finally saying the truth out loud." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun climb higher above the horizon. The ocean sparkled like scattered diamonds in the early light. "I've been thinking," Natalie finally said, "about all those years I spent trying to be the good daughter, following their blueprint for my life. I became a surgeon because Dad said it was prestigious, married another doctor because Mom thought it was suitable, bought a house in their neighborhood because it was expected. I've been living my entire life for their approval. And now?" I asked gently. "Now, I'm not sure who I am without it," she admitted. "But I want to find out." She turned to look at me directly. "How did you do it, Sam? How did you find the courage to build your own path when they were so against it?" I considered her question carefully. I think I just reached a point where the pain of not being true to myself became greater than the pain of disappointing them. Law school was slowly killing my spirit. Each day I spent there, I could feel myself disappearing into someone I didn't recognize. Eventually, the need to be authentic outweighed the need for approval. "I want that," Natalie said quietly. "I want to know what I want, not what they want for me." "It's not too late," I reassured her, squeezing her hand. "And you don't have to do it alone." The sliding door opened again as Daniel emerged, followed by Amanda and her boyfriend, who had stayed in another guest room. "Morning, Mitchell sisters." Amanda greeted us cheerfully. "Any regrets about last night's family showdown?" I exchanged a look with Natalie. Surprisingly, no, I answered. It was painful, but necessary. Good, Amanda nodded approvingly. Because I brought breakfast from that bakery down the road, and it would be a shame to enjoy these croissants with a side of regret. We gathered around the outdoor dining table, the spread of pastries, fruit, and coffee creating a casual, comfortable atmosphere. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and moments of reflection. It felt like the morning after a storm, the air clearer, the world somehow renewed. Your parents called me, Daniel mentioned casually as he reached for another croissant. My hand froze halfway to my coffee mug. When? About an hour ago. Your father wants to discuss the situation privately, man to man. His tone made it clear what he thought of that approach. What did you tell him? Natalie asked. That any conversation about Samantha should include Samantha, Daniel replied simply. He didn't like that answer. I bet he didn't, I said, a mixture of appreciation for Daniel's loyalty and weariness at my father's predictable tactics. They'll try to divide and conquer. It's their specialty. My phone buzzed with an incoming call, my mother's number flashing on the screen. I stared at it for a moment, then declined the call. Not ready? Amanda asked gently. Not on their terms, I clarified. If we talk again, it needs to be with clear boundaries and without manipulation. I can't go back to the old dynamic. You might need help navigating that, Daniel suggested. Have you considered therapy? Not because there's something wrong with you, he added hastily, but because professional support could be valuable when dealing with such entrenched patterns. Actually, I've been thinking about it for years, I admitted. I just never had the courage to take that step. It felt like admitting defeat somehow. Or like taking control, Natalie offered. I've been seeing someone for about 6 months. Secretly, of course. Mom and Dad would have a fit if they knew. I looked at my sister with newfound respect. You have? Why didn't you tell me? Because I was ashamed, she confessed. The perfect daughter needing therapy didn't fit the image, but it's been helping me see our family dynamics more clearly. It's partly why I was finally able to stand up to them last night. Our conversation was interrupted by another call, this time from an unknown number. Assuming it might be work-related, I answered. Samantha Mitchell? This is Jessica Parker from Tech Insider. I hope I'm not calling too early. Not at all, I assured her. What can I do for you? I wanted to let you know that my editor loves the angle on your story. The piece about building success despite family opposition, rather than because of family connections, has really resonated with him. It's going to be the cover for our next issue. The cover? I repeated, surprised. Yes. We're calling it Breaking the Mold, How Samantha Mitchell Built a Tech Empire Her Way. We'd like to send a photographer out for a proper photo shoot later this week, if that works for you. After confirming details, I hung up and shared the news with the group. From family black sheep to magazine cover story, Amanda grinned. If that's not poetic justice, I don't know what is. It's not about revenge, I clarified, though the irony wasn't lost on me. It's about finally owning my narrative. As the morning progressed, we moved to the pool area, basking in the California sunshine. Natalie and I had a long, overdue conversation about our childhood, our parents' impact on our relationship, and our hopes for building a stronger sister bond moving forward. I've always admired you, she confessed, surprising me. Your courage to pursue what you believed in, even when everyone was against you. I just didn't know how to show it without feeling disloyal to Mom and Dad. And I've envied how easily you seemed to win their approval, I admitted. I thought you had it all, their love, their pride, their support. I had their approval, not their support, Natalie clarified. There's a difference. And their approval came with golden handcuffs. Every choice predetermined. Every deviation punished with withdrawal of affection. We agreed to start fresh, not as the good daughter and the disappointment, but simply as sisters supporting each other's authentic journeys. Around noon, my phone rang again, my father's number this time. After a moment's hesitation, I answered, putting it on speaker. Samantha. His voice was stiff, formal. Your mother and I have been discussing last night's unfortunate incident. And? I kept my tone neutral. We feel you owe us an apology for embarrassing us in front of your guests. However, we're willing to move past this if you'll agree to certain conditions going forward. I caught Natalie's eye, both of us recognizing the familiar pattern of conditional acceptance. What conditions? I asked. Though I already knew the answer would be unacceptable. First, this estrangement from Natalie needs to end immediately. You've clearly influenced her against us, and that stops now. Second, we expect more respect for our position as your parents. Third, we should be consulted before you speak to the press about your business ventures, given our family name is associated with your activities. The old Samantha might have acquiesced, might have compromised her truth for a semblance of family peace. But that Samantha had left the building. Dad, I care about you and Mom, I said carefully. But I can't accept those terms. I'm not going to pretend our family is something it's not. I'm not going to silence my truth to protect your image. And I'm certainly not going to let you control my relationship with Natalie or my professional narrative. Then we have nothing more to discuss, he replied coldly. Not under these conditions, no, I agreed. But if you're ever ready to have an honest conversation, one where you acknowledge the harm you've caused and genuinely wish to build a healthier relationship, I'll be here. After a moment of tense silence, the line went dead. I looked up to find 4 pairs of eyes watching me with varying degrees of pride and concern. You okay? Daniel asked softly. Yeah, I realized with some surprise. I actually am. For the first time, I didn't cave to avoid their disapproval. I stated my boundary and stuck to it. Progress, not perfection. Amanda raised her glass of orange juice in a toast. Over the next few weeks, a new rhythm to my life emerged. Natalie temporarily moved into one of my guest rooms, needing space from our parents as she reevaluated her life choices. We both began therapy individually at first, then adding joint sessions to address our sibling dynamic. Daniel and I grew closer through the experience, his steady support never wavering. Amanda continued being my professional sounding board as I explored potential new ventures now that my non-compete clause was nearing its end. My parents maintained their distance, though they made several more attempts to reassert control, first through flying monkeys, family friends calling to mediate, then through guilt, my mother's tearful voicemails about family loyalty, and finally through threats, my father's veiled suggestions that I could be written out of their will. Each attempt was met with the same calm but firm boundary. I was open to reconciliation, but only on the basis of mutual respect and acknowledgement of past harm. Tech Insider's cover story was published as promised, generating significant buzz in the industry and beyond. Jessica Parker had crafted a nuanced piece about navigating family opposition while building business success, a narrative that resonated with many readers who had faced similar challenges. The most meaningful response came from a young woman who emailed me after reading the article. I've been hiding my tech startup from my parents for 2 years because they want me to be a doctor. Your story gave me courage to finally tell them the truth. Thank you for showing it's possible to succeed without family support. 3 months after the housewarming, I hosted a much smaller dinner on my deck. Just 6 people this time: Daniel, Amanda and her now fiancée, Natalie, and her new boyfriend, a high school art teacher who would have given my parents heart palpitations, and me. As we shared a meal prepared by our own hands rather than caterers, I looked around at these people who had chosen to be in my life and whom I had chosen in return. I'd like to make a toast, I said, raising my glass. To chosen family, to authentic lives, and to the understanding that true success isn't measured in dollars or property, but in the courage to be genuinely yourself. To authentic lives, they echoed, glasses clinking in the golden light of sunset. Later, as Daniel and I stood alone on the deck watching stars appear above the ocean, he asked, "Any regrets? About your parents?" I considered the question carefully. I regret that they couldn't accept me for who I am. I regret the years spent seeking approval I was never going to receive. But I don't regret finally standing in my truth, even though it cost me their presence in my life. And if they never come around, he asked gently, then I'll have to accept that too, I said. I can't control their choices, only my response to them. And I choose to live authentically, surrounded by people who value the real me. As I looked out at the endless horizon where ocean met sky, I felt a profound sense of peace. The $6 million villa that had begun as a monument to success, perhaps even as a final attempt to win parental approval, had transformed into something more meaningful. A symbol of self-determination. A home not defined by its monetary value, but by the authentic connections fostered within its walls. The journey of healing had just begun. But for the first time, I was walking it as myself, not as the daughter seeking approval, not as the rebel defining herself in opposition, but simply as Samantha Mitchell, embracing all that I was and all that I might become. What about you? Have you ever had to choose between being true to yourself or pleasing family members who couldn't accept your authentic path? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if you found this journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to create boundaries with family when necessary. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, your worth isn't determined by others' approval, but by the courage to live authentically in a world that often rewards conformity. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.